Look, when your government was
I'm just trying to get a sense from, because you're close to the Iranian regime, I want to get a sense of whether...
What does that mean exactly? I'm close to the Iranian regime. Is that how you introduce academics from your own country?
No. In the way that I...
Before we get into this, this clip is a couple months old, but the conversation happening in it is nowhere near finished. So everything you're about to watch still applies to what's going on right now. We've got an Iranian academic named Muhammad Mirandi facing off against a Western journalist, and it doesn't take long before things get tense. I'm going to let it play all the way through, then come back and break it down. Make sure you subscribe to the Evan Tate Show. Hit the like button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Now let's get into it.
The protests that are taking place, the latest round of protests, they seem to be pretty intense and pretty persistent, up to and including this latest tweet from or post from the US president. What do you say is going on there? What do you say those protests are about?
Well, there are two issues here. One is that because of the U.S. sanctions and European sanctions, basically because of Iran's policy against Israel,
What is Iran's policy against Israel?
Yes, because
what is it?
The whole sanction, Iran's position?
Against Israel, yeah.
Yeah, Iran says that Israel is an apartheid state. It is not morally legitimate, and that Palestinians have the right to return, just like apartheid South Africa.
That it shouldn't
and
exist.
And back then,
that it shouldn't exist. It's not. Is that
no?
What you mean?
As an apartheid entity, no. Apartheid should not exist anyway. When your government was supporting...
I'm just trying to get a sense from, because you're close to the Iranian regime, I want to get a sense of whether...
What does that mean exactly? I'm close to the Iranian regime. Is that how you introduce academics from your own country?
No. In the way that I know that I'm close in terms of having easy access to and contact with and conversations with members of the cabinet. That's all I meant. I didn't mean...
Would you call them the regime?
Well,
would you say it like the...
Do you want to go into that?
Yeah, sure. Well, what's the question?
Well, have there been regular democratic elections that...
No, you were talking about Israel.
Oh, okay, we'll go back
Iran's
to that.
position on Israel...
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a sense of whether
Iran's position on Israel is identical to its position on apartheid South Africa. When your government was supporting the supremacist regime in South Africa, the Iranians were supporting the ANC and Nelson Mandela.
Yeah.
The same logic applies to Palestine.
Right. So it's not the existence of Israel, it's the nature of this Israeli state. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly.
That Iran's supposed to.
The state could be called... Yeah, the state could be called Palestine, it could be called Israel, it could be called Walt Disney. But as an apartheid state for Iran, this is not acceptable.
And isn't Iran something of an apartheid state, particularly if you're a woman?
Have you ever been to Iran?
No, but there's lots of countries I haven't been to that I know about, hear about, read about, speak to people about.
It's not an apartheid state. No, it's not an apartheid state.
Women are dragged off the street for not wearing the veil?
No, that's not true at all.
It is true.
Well, you can say it's true, but that doesn't make it a fact.
I think most people listening know that it is true.
I live in Iran. Many journalists come to Iran. Journalists that you can invite, Jewish journalist Max Blumenthal from the Gray Zone, invite him on your show. And he's been to Iran just recently for a couple of weeks. He went to different cities on his own with his wife, who's also a journalist. Ask him if any women have been dragged off the streets anywhere that he's been to.
So you're denying that the Iranian government forces women to wear the veil, the hijab?
Well, veil is one thing.
I know it is. That's why I corrected myself. And those that don't want to...
You mean a headscarf?
The headscarf. And those that don't want to cover their hair, it's trouble for them, isn't it?
No, nothing happens to them. No, nothing happens to them. And some of my students on campus, in classrooms on campus, they don't wear headscarves. So I think I'm just trying to get a sense. Is your assertion that in Iran, in the last decade, and even more recently than that, not a single woman, particularly a protesting young woman, has been detained and in one case died in custody with wounds from beating because she had her hair shown? You don't believe that happened? No. Mahsa Amini had no wounds. There is no footage. There is footage of her
And in the footage, there is nothing that shows that she was beaten. She had a precondition. Yes, she was taken in, but she was not beaten for her dress. There is a law in Iran about a dress code, because whether you like it or not, they believe that the way in which the West promotes women is sexualization, commodification, objectification. So they'll have their own cultural boundaries, whether you agree with it or not.
Well, you've said to me
whether you agree with it or not.
Yeah.
It doesn't. That's one thing. But women being dragged off the streets in Tehran, I've never seen that happen myself.
No, but
this
that
is like
doesn't mean
when
it
they keep
hasn't
saying
happened, does it?
gays in Iran are executed. I've never seen a gay person in Iran executed.
But
this is
that doesn't mean it's never
myth
happened, does it?
No.
Just because you haven't seen a woman being dragged off the streets doesn't mean it hasn't happened.
No, I'm not saying it's never happened.
And you are wrong
like
to say,
London,
if I can just
like
say,
in
you
London,
are wrong to say that Mahsa Amini had no injuries. She had physical injuries, including a skull fracture and brain edema.
No, she didn't. No.
Well, an independent
No,
medical
that's not-
analysis and a UN fact-finding mission determined that she did.
There was no UN fact-finding mission in Iran. Where are you getting this information? What was the name of the UN fact-finding mission team? The name of the person who did this?
I don't have that in front of me, but I can find
Yeah,
it for
of course.
you. But
You
you can
get
say that
it
about
from
any
these-
statement that I make.
No, but the thing
And I
is
could
that
do
you
it
get
back
this.
to you.
No, because you can't, because the point is that you have to give me names. If I say in the UK, people are being arrested for saying no to genocide, for having a billboard in their hands, no to genocide, they're being arrested for that. I have to show footage of it happening. And I have to show the law saying that this is how it's done. And when you tell me that if you tell me, has a woman ever been dragged away, I'll say yes. If you say that have people been beaten on the streets by the police, I'd say yes. In protests and riots, it happens. Well, if you tell me innocent people have died in Iran in prisons, I'd say probably yes.
Well, it's interesting.
But when you tell, and I would say the same about your country as well. And I would say the same about your country. But in your country and in the West, the caricature of Iran is very far from reality. And the reason is because of your country's hatred for Iran, which has been ongoing for 45 years. If Iran was so deeply despised, then it should have collapsed by now, so long ago.
But when you say, you ask
and
me,
then your government and your media is concerned about human rights in Iran, where you support Israel, not you, I mean your government, you support Israel, you help Israel in Gaza, you have the flights that go overhead.
We support the rights of Iranians as well. We support the rights of Iranians.
No, you don't. You actually are a country that tries to harm Iranians because you impose sanctions on ordinary Iranians. The maximum pressure sanctions. Do you think the maximum pressure sanctions hurt a government minister?
You know the reasons.
They're intended
you know the
to
reasons
make
for that.
ordinary people suffer.
You might not like it, but you know the reasons for that. I mean, can I just come back to you on one thing?
What are the reasons? Because since I don't like it, you should tell me. What are the reasons for the sanctions?
The reasons include the proxy terrorist activity that's been, I would argue, I'm sure you are going to disagree with me, but the proxy terrorist activity that Iran has been involved in for decades
What are these
now.
Who are these
Hezbollah,
terrorists?
Hamas, others arming.
Hezbollah is
Syria.
So Hezbollah you consider as a terrorist organization, right?
In part.
No. In part?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Well,
is it a terrorist organization?
In part.
Is it a terrorist
in the same way that
organization
the
or not?
Republican movement in Northern Ireland was in part
No, in the same way
terroristic
that your
and in part
government is a
political.
terrorist organization in part. Your
Well,
government is a
that's
terrorist organization.
Is that
Well,
your view?
That doesn't make sense.
Is that your
Either
view?
you're a terrorist or you're not.
No, organizations can be partly terroristic and partly political. You know that.
Just for your information, Hezbollah was created out of the Israeli invasion of Lebanon. It was a creation of the occupation. Just like the ANC was a terrorist organization and Nelson Mandela was a terrorist according to your government standards at the time, Hezbollah was created when the Israelis invaded Lebanon and took Beirut.
But you do know, surely, as an academic, that organisations can be terroristic and political and have wings which are both, and social as well. The Republican movement in Ireland certainly did.
So you're saying that the political wing of Hezbollah is not a terrorist organization?
It has connections to a terrorist organisation, yeah, but it operates on different levels.
So it's not a terrorist organization.
In part, it is.
Look, I know you don't want to answer the question. From our perspective, Hezbollah is a national liberation organization that has recovered the South Lebanon and saved Lebanon from Israeli occupation and colonization. And Hezbollah's sin is that it supports the Palestinian people. Hezbollah has been resisting the Israeli regime, and it opposes the regime and the ethnic cleansing and the genocide. Your government, your media supports the genocide. You like Israel, you like what they do, and you consider them to be in your camp. Obviously, we have huge differences because Hezbollah has not carried out mass slaughter, and Israel has. And your government supports despots, countries that have zero elections, but they're not regimes.
But Hezbollah did carry out mass firing of missiles into Israel as well, just to report a fact back at you.
Israel invaded Lebanon multiple times. It took Beirut, and Israel bombs intentionally apartment blocks in Lebanon. Just today, it destroyed houses in southern Lebanon. Almost every day, it carries out assassinations.
I'm just making the point that the fire isn't just in one direction.
You're proving a point. You're proving a point that the Israeli regime, which carries out murder and slaughter, is normal. And it is not a terrorist organization. But Hezbollah, when it responds with far less fire capability and without killing all these civilians as the Israelis do, they're the terrorists. Or partially terrorists.
And
that standard of yours, that standard of yours, and it's not just you, it's your country, it's your government, it's the entire Western political establishment, is the problem. It is the problem in our region.
And a problem
because you are choosing despots and you are choosing regimes that carry out ethnic cleansing as your allies because they serve your interests.
If I can speak, you say that is the problem. Iran has agency. It's making some of its own choices. Some of its people are currently protesting very vocally about the conditions they find themselves in, which I know some of which is related to sanctions. The women 2 years ago, many women were protesting about the conditions they find themselves in. However you characterise it, I will characterise it differently if I may, and I will equally characterise it.
I didn't characterise it. I didn't say anything. You asked me a specific question about an individual. Did women protest 4 years ago or 3.5 years ago?
They did.
Yes, many did.
Yeah.
Did students protest? Yes, many did. Did people protest 3-4 days ago on the street in Tehran? Yes, people did. But the rioters, they're a different group of people.
What should the Iranian government's response to, or what will, in your view, the Iranian government's response to the protests and what they're calling for and complaining about, what will it be? What's it likely to be in your view?
Roxana, on the first day of protests, they were peaceful. Was anyone arrested? Did the police attack anyone on day one? That's when the protests were bigger, actually, in Tehran, right? Now we have small riots here and there where they attack the police, they shoot at the police, they throw Molotov cocktails, and so the police responds. But on day one, there was no violence.
So for your
and the government, because the government recognized their protests as legitimate.
So for you, the Donald Trump
the question for me is the question for me is that in your country, if there are protests in Iran, you don't see this as a normal process in civil society. You see it as the regime, as you like to call it,
protest
the regime on the verge.
Protest is normal. I haven't said it's abnormal at all.
But in your country, if there are protests and we see police officers
we question
hammering
all the
people,
time. We question all the time.
And they hammer, but that's a part of the process.
But here in Iran, hang on, I'm going to insist on speaking here.
Okay, so now that you've seen it, let's talk about what actually just happened there, because that was a lot. First thing I want to say is, regardless of where you stand on any of this politically, what you just watched was a very clear example of how these kinds of interviews are set up. The journalist came in with a framing already built, Iran bad, full stop, and the goal was to get Mirandi to either defend the indefensible or trip over his own words, but he didn't. He stayed calm, he stayed sharp, and every time they tried to pin him into a corner. He flipped the script and made them answer for their own contradictions. Now look, the Mahsa Amini part, that's where it got really interesting to me, because the journalist made a strong claim, and when Mirandi pushed back and asked for specifics, the receipts weren't there in that moment, and that matters. You can't come into a debate like that and expect the other person to just accept what you're saying because it sounds right. That's not how it works. And then the Hezbollah conversation, when Mirandi brought up that Hezbollah was literally created as a direct response to Israel invading Lebanon, that's not a conspiracy theory. That's in the history books. But the whole conversation was framed like Iran and its allies just woke up one day and decided to be the bad guys. No context, no cause and effect, just the conclusion. And that's exactly the kind of thing we dig into here on the Evan Tate Show, because the full story always looks different from the headline version. This situation is still developing, and we're going to keep following it. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next one. Drop a comment below. Let me know where you're watching from and what you thought about that exchange. I'm Evan Tate, and I'll catch you in the next one.